So good morning. My name is Reverend Dr. Ron Fox, and I'd like to welcome you to the Center for Spiritual Living Space Coast's Sunday morning Easter service. Happy Easter, everybody. Glad you're here. And if you're watching this during the week, we hope you enjoy what we're going to present today. And I want to begin, as we always do every week, to say if there's anybody listening to this that's never been to a Center for Spiritual Living before, we believe there's one God, many paths to that God, and we're here to love, honor, and support you no matter what your divine path is. And the Center for Spiritual Living Space Coast is a safe haven for people of all beliefs and lifestyles, whoever you are and wherever you find yourself on your journey of faith, you're welcome here. And so to begin our service this morning, my wife Becky, who's a practitioner emeritus, will open us with a prayer, and then Carol Gabika will honor us with a spiritual reading.
So I just invite everybody to turn within to that place of the Most High. Right here, right now, we recognize this wonderful divine spirit that is all around us, that is in the form and the formless, in the unseen and the seen. And I'm knowing my oneness and infinite spirit, that it is here where I recognize the divinity within me. And I am knowing this for each person who is here with us this morning and who will view this recording later on, that each one of us is divine in nature. And so knowing this, knowing that each one of us is one in this divinity, that we are one with one another, that as we open up our hearts and our minds, allowing our awareness to deepen this consciousness of oneness, of love, of unity, and knowing that as we allow this wonderful divine power to emerge, to arise through us, as us, and for us, that we are love. We are each loved. And knowing that the same divine power is expressing itself so easily and effortlessly through Reverend Dr. Ron and his message this morning, allowing us to be aware of this rebirth, this renewal of who and what we really are, this God self, this wonderful divine power that is emerging through us. And so I'm knowing that as we listen and allow ourselves to deepen our consciousness right now, that we hear this inner voice, we listen to this urge to be rebirthed. We listen to this voice to allow us to just know the truth about ourselves. And so I just give thanks for knowing this truth. I release it and I let it go and just know that it is already done. And so it is. Amen.
Good Friday and Easter, days on the calendar that mark transition. Transition from winter's hibernation to spring's blossoming. Days that represent a carpenter from nowhere, whose impact is still felt worldwide over 2,000 years later. Sandals and the robe of the poor, whose voice still resonates in our world of mass media and social networking. A carpenter rises still above all our chatter. Entered a city as a hero, was turned on by the same throngs, carried the cross that he was sacrificed on. That all those thousands of years later is the hallmark of eternal life, a voice that still resonates, reminding us of our blessings as we carry our own crosses, our own challenges, our eyes open to see our brothers carrying their own cross, all the same weight. And if they stumble, we reach out a hand to help them regain their balance. And we walk on together, celebrating the majesty of life as the bird's song celebrates the majesty of spring.
Thank you so much, Carol. So today's Easter Sunday, and I thought I'd begin the message today with a couple of quotes one from a New Thought minister and one from the spiritual master that lived a long time ago. So the first quote is from Eric Butterworth, who wrote, "Easter is a time to take a new look at ourselves and contemplate the divinity in us, the depths of our own God potential. It is a time to reappraise the principle that makes all overcoming possible." So Easter, he's saying Easter is about all of us having that Christ potential. And that's one reason I think that those of us in New Thought say that Jesus was the great example rather than the great exception. If he were the great exception, all we could do is kind of stand back and admire the work that he did. Whereas if we see him as the great example, we can all hope to emulate what he did and his behavior in our own lives. The second quote that I want to share with you is from the Christian mystic Meister Eckhart, who lived from 1260 to 1328. And he makes the same point. He said, "What good is it to me if this eternal birth of the divine Son takes place unceasingly, but it does not take place within myself?" So resurrection is about new beginnings. It's we die to one experience and resurrect ourselves to a larger experience. And it's not a one-time event. You know, when people experience divorce, job loss, the death of a loved one, so often what happens to us is our old identity dies and a new one can be born. And so I want to share with you this morning an example of somebody resurrecting their life. And I got this from a book called Guidance from the Darkness by a friend of Becky and mine, Reverend Mary Murray Shelton. And I think it's self-explanatory. It's a letter, and it starts off, "Dear friends, I found this beautiful magazine in a dirty, rundown motel room. When I went into that room, I was an alcoholic and an addict. When I left, I was a shining, clean and free woman. I was free from my obsession for alcohol and drugs. I was free for the first time in many years. My life before this consisted of being locked up in hospital wards, jails, and prisons. One by one, I gave up my 4 children. During one of my more desperate times of loneliness, I stole one of my children from her new mother, and for this insanity, I was put in prison. I never knew what resentments were. What I felt was a deep hatred for the whole world, but most of all, for myself. I felt guilty too, and knew that it was to be a very lone, I knew what it was to be very lonely. The fears I had were many and some were nameless. I made several attempts at suicide. This was my life until I found that beautiful Science of Mind magazine two years ago in that dirty little hotel room. I read the words that told me God's dwelling place is within man. And if I would still my thoughts, I would realize his presence. My friend, can you understand what those words meant to me when I had given up the desire to live? Those words made me realize that God and I had never been separated, that we would never be apart in this world or any other world. I felt fear leave me and a great stillness surround me. A river of peace flowed through me, and streams of light broke through the darkness and shone through me. I was healed. That light has never left me, and each time I turn within to God's presence, I found the light steady and undimmed by time. I know this light is the love God has for man. May God bless you, my friend, and may he bless those wonderful people who wrote those words and started a chain of miracles. With love, Jane Doe. That's resurrection. Jane Doe, who left that room, wasn't the same Jane Doe that entered that room. Easter is about freeing ourselves from limited living. It's about a whole new way of living and being. It's waking up to who we are and asking the questions, who am I? And why am I here? So I want to share with you something about a lady named Megan McKenna. Megan McKenna is Catholic. She's a writer and she's a speaker. And I read a story. I read it this week, but I had read it years ago about Megan, who was facilitating a book study group. And sometime during that period, and during the morning or the afternoon when she was doing it, somebody rose up and said to her, "Have you ever brought somebody back from the dead?" And her response was, "Yes. Every time I bring hope into a situation, every time I bring joy into a shattered despair, every time I forgive others and give them back their dignity, every time I listen to others and affirm their life, every time I speak the truth, every time I fight injustice, yes, I bring people back from the dead." That's resurrection. And that's the kind of resurrection we all can do. Whether it's Jane Doe coming out of a hotel room, a different person, whether it's Megan touching the lives of so many people, you and I can do that. You and I can resurrect our own lives and can be a conduit for others resurrecting their lives. Ernest Holmes, who founded our Center of Spiritual Living, he wrote in one of his books that you and I have built tombs for ourselves, that we've bound ourselves by fear, by superstition, and by unbelief. And he said, and yet there's always a voice saying to us, arise, arise, and come forth. In The Science of Mind, he wrote, "No man ever walks life's road alone. There is ever another who walks with him. This is his inner self, the undying reality. We must not look afar to see the Christ, for he is ever near at hand, always within us." So I want to kind of switch topics for a second, and then I'll come back. You know, in the Bible, that we read about Jesus on the cross, and it's been written that his last words on the cross have become known as the last 7 words or the last 7 sayings. And I'm sure some of you have heard that, and you might remember, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do," or "Today you shall be with me in paradise," or "I thirst." And those are 3 examples. But I want to speak to you this morning about a different word that Jesus said, a different sentence that Jesus said. This too is also part of those last 7 words or sentences. The Bible says, he said, my God, why have you forsaken me?" Well, there are a lot of Bible scholars in today's world that don't believe that that's a good translation, and that in fact, it's a poor translation, that Jesus never said that. In fact, one of the Bible scholars that I read this week said, you know, the Jesus I know would never have said that. So you can ask, well, what's a better translation? And here it is. My God, it is for this purpose I have come." What a difference, huh? From my God, why have thou forsaken me?" to my God, it is for this purpose I have come. So what is the purpose? What's the reason that Jesus came? Well, I think it's the same purpose or the same reason that all of us are here: to recognize and to actualize the divinity that's within each of us. And not just that, but to live it, You and I can create the life we choose to live. We can create the story that we want to live. And so the true message is to roll away the stone of lack, to roll away the stone of limitation, to roll away the stone that says you can't live the dream that you wish to live, to roll away the stone that says you're not enough, to roll away the stone that says you're not smart enough. That's the purpose for, I believe, that we all have come here. You know, when Jesus was at the grave of his friend Lazarus, he didn't ask God to roll away the stone, because God doesn't do that for us. God can't do that for us. That's our job. We need to roll away the obstacles that are the barriers that keep us from having the life of spirit flow through us. And we can do that because, as Holmes reminded us, we never walk this path alone. And let me share with you something that Albert Camus wrote that's so beautiful, that also makes that point. He said, "In the midst of hate, I found there was within me an invincible love. In the midst of tears, I found there was within me an invincible smile. In the midst of chaos, I found there was within me an invincible calm. I realized through it all that in the midst of winter, I found there was within me an invincible summer. And that makes me happy. For it says that no matter how hard the world pushes against me, within me, there's something stronger, something better, pushing right back. So this week, I read an article by a couple named Frederick and Marianne Broussat. And what the article was about was ways we can practice resurrection in our daily life. They actually pinpointed 37 different ways we can do it. Well, I'm not going to do all 37, but I want to run by 8 of them for you. So here we go. We can open our hearts, our minds, and our soul to the pain that's within the world. We can live in the present moment when God brings forth its light. We can pray for others. When you forgive, a resurrection is in the making. When you bring hope to someone in despair, a resurrection is in the making. When you bring joy to those around you, a resurrection is in the making. When you work for justice, freedom, and equality, a resurrection is in the making. And lastly, when you give voice to your yearning and act upon your desire to feel closeness to God, a resurrection is in the making. So I want to close this morning with words from a modern day mystic, Reverend Dr. Howard Thurman, who wrote a piece he titled The Moments of High Resolve. Despite the dullness and barrenness of the days that pass, if I search with due diligence, I can always find a deposit left by some former radiance, but I had forgotten. At the time, it was full-orbed, glorious, and resplendent. I was sure that I would never forget. And in the moment of its fullness, I was sure it would illumine my path for all the rest of my journey. I had forgotten how easy it is to forget. There was no intent to betray what seemed so sure at the time. My response was whole, clean, authentic. But little by little, there crept into my life the dust and grit of the journey. Details, lower level demands, all kinds of cross currents. Nothing momentous, nothing overwhelming, nothing flagrant, just wear and tear. If there had been some direct challenge, a clear-cut issue, I would have fought it to the end and beyond. In the quietness of this place, surrounded by the all-pervading presence of God, my heart whispers, keep fresh before me the moments of my high resolve, that in fair weather or in foul, in good times or in tempests, in the days when the darkness and foe are nameless and or familiar, I may not forget that to which my life is committed. Keep fresh before me the moments of my high resolve. Thank you for being here this morning. God bless you. Happy Easter and have a blessed week.